Hello, my name is Cyclone Sauce, and today we're going to be tracking the remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Kirrily and her impact across the Australian weather over the next couple of days. And then we're also going to take a look at the Coral Sea system and see what that is going to be doing over the next 10 days as well. The forecast has changed on that system once again. However, we're still not looking out for that significant sort of storm that we've been expecting in the Coral Sea, so there is a lot of good news surrounding said storm. If you are brand new here, then please consider subscribing and also leave a like on the video while you're at it. You can see ex-tropical cyclone Kirrily swirling around over the Northern Territory Queensland border right now. If we zoom in and take a look at the rainfall, you can see quite a lot of rainfall is falling around it north of Mount Isa at this time. The storm's centre of circulation is located about here, and if we were to play this rainfall loop over for the past hour, you can see that it is quite a lot of rainfall, especially on the southern side of it. Now, I'm not sure why it doesn't register rainfall on the northern side, because there is quite a lot of thunderstorm activity towards the northern side. It might be just because it's out of range from the radar, or maybe there just isn't too much there. It's just this really thick cloud band moving across the north of the system, but that does look like a pretty mean amount of rainfall on the southern side, and that will definitely be dropping up to 150 millimeters for a lot of locations throughout today. And if we were to take a look at said rainfall accumulation over the next 24 hours, there will be locations picking up 50 to 100 millimeters in quite a lot of locations, especially towards the Queensland Northern Territory border or just inside into Northern Territory. The rainfall has shifted about 100 kilometers further west from where we were expecting it to fall yesterday, and that's because the tropical low, which actually made landfall as a tropical cyclone very briefly, it made landfall about here near Mornington Island. We're actually expecting the landfall over here around Burketon, but it has made landfall quite significantly further towards the west, and it's these little wobbles in these tropical cyclones that can have drastic ramifications on the impacts and the spread of the rainfall in these tropical cyclones. So that's something that everybody in a cyclone-prone area should be watching out for, is wobbles in the track, because they can have a huge impact. We saw it with Kirrily, how she wobbled about 50 kilometers up to the north, and the worst conditions missed Townsville, and it sort of blew through between Townsville and Cardwell. So that was very good news, and that's a classic example of a wobble in a tropical cyclone just before landfall. They're very unpredictable systems, as we all know. Over the next 3 days, rainfall accumulation will be quite high across parts of the Northern Territory. Up to 200 millimeters is expected in some locations, but it's getting really deep into the Australian red centre, so it's not a big threat to many populated locations. Alice Springs completely misses out on the rainfall. They'll probably be getting a couple of hot days associated with this, and also Mount Isa, Cloncurry, Julia Creek, and then even down towards Birdsville as well. Places that were expecting up to 100 millimeters in the next 5 days, just a couple of days ago, they're now only expecting about 10 to 50 millimeters. So it's a big change in the forecast from what we've had over the past couple of days, and it means that these communities will remain a lot drier. Now, that isn't to say that it's necessarily a bad thing. I know a lot of these communities are reeling for a little bit of rainfall at this time. However, anywhere within river catchments, anywhere downstream from significant rivers is likely to still see those rivers flow, especially into Lake Eyre. This is a lot of rainfall moving towards, say, Moomba and Birdsville, and it's likely that Lake Eyre will fill somewhat as a result of the passage of this tropical low. And then she'll move into northern New South Wales and be gone by around, I would say, on next Monday or Tuesday. She'll be blowing through the southern parts of Sydney down towards Wollongong and Canberra. I know that's a long way out of Sydney, but it will be south of Sydney where the worst the rainfall is. And I use the words worst of the rainfall quite loosely, because we're only looking at about 50 to 80 millimeters in 1 or 2 locations at a worst case, and it's just going to be widespread totals of around 30 millimeters. And it's just going to be this moderate precipitation that lasts for a couple of hours with the passage of this tropical low. We'll take a look at the rainfall forecast hour by hour right now and see what's actually in store for this storm. By around Saturday and into Sunday, or the Saturday evening, it's going to be moving deeper into the Northern Territory, really starting to weaken off at this time. The reds and the blacks indicate very heavy rainfall totals, and you can also see on the southern side of the system, on the forward side of the system's passage, there could be quite a lot of thunderstorm activity moving into the storm as a result of the trough that is expected to extend extend out of it. So anywhere further forward of the storm, they'll be receiving very hot days to start with, but also some pretty nasty thunderstorms in the evening, precursoring to the passage of this tropical low. And as it weakens very significantly and moves towards Mumbai, it will be just a couple of hours of relatively heavy rainfall. We're looking at 3-hourly totals of around 60 to maybe even 100 millimetres in 1 or 2 locations, so moderate to heavy rainfall. And this will also bring some very hot conditions into New South Wales Monday and into Tuesday. I'm expecting a top of 37 actually on Tuesday for Sydney, so it could be very warm indeed with these troughs that are moving through, and you can see quite a lot of locations up towards Lightning Ridge, 41 degrees Celsius. So it's going to be a rather warm day by next Monday as this tropical low moves through, and you can see that moderate to heavy precipitation moving towards the Great Dividing Range and then across into Sydney, completely dissipating by around Tuesday. It doesn't even get over the Great Dividing Range by the looks of things, and then it just moves out to sea and completely peters out. However, it could promote some pretty significant thunderstorm activity across parts of northern New South Wales and also up towards Queensland as well, where we might be seeing some relatively strong thunderstorms by next Tuesday and Wednesday with the passage of this tropical low. But the situation for the Gulf of Carpentaria at least is really starting to ease off now, and it's just going to be inland Queensland and the Northern Territory that get impacted today. And to recap, she made landfall as a Category 1 strength tropical cyclone as per the wind analysis that some agencies have taken on this tropical cyclone. I know the JTWC, which is based in Hawaii, they classified this as a 40-knot system making landfall on Australia. So it was a Category 1 cyclone as per maximum sustained winds and also as per the Gale Quadrant rule from the official forecast over in Hawaii. But the Bureau of Meteorology did not upgrade it to Category 1 strength tropical cyclone Kirrily. And I mean, I don't blame him. She did look pretty good, but she only had that appearance for about 6 hours. So probably not properly classifiable as a tropical cyclone, but you could have gone either way with that. But as I start to waffle here, we're going to switch it over and take a look at the Coral Sea now. I think this is going to become our priority in videos from now on. It's not really an Australian land threat, but again, a shift in the forecast, and we have seen a rather strong system blow up by a couple of model forecasts, namely the Eastern Relief and also the Access G3 over the past 24 hours. And you can see by next Wednesday, we're already starting to see this system develop here as we switch over to the wind forecast. Looking at the Eastern Relief first, it heads towards Queensland as a strong tropical low, developing into a cyclone by Saturday the 10th of February, so next weekend, in fact in a week today. And then moves towards some of the Coral Sea atolls through here. It's well offshore from, say, Willis Island and Marion Reef at this point, before it heads parallel to the Australian coastline and pulls away towards New Caledonia by next Sunday and into Monday. But a relatively strong tropical cyclone here. This is a Category 2 strength system moving through the Coral Sea, so it's absolutely nothing to be messing around with peak sustained winds of around 100 kilometres an hour and wind gusts approaching 160 or 170 in 1 or 2 locations in the storm's centre. So it's a strong system, it's got very destructive wind gusts, and it's a lot stronger than what we were expecting just 24 hours ago. Now, to switch it over completely to take a look at the GFS forecast model, you can see as I switched it over, the first frame was the Eastern Relief forecast, and this is the GFS. So they've got a very similar picture by next Tuesday and into Wednesday, which means it's actually very good certainty and congruency now with what the storm is going to be doing over the next sort of 4 to 5 days. It's going to be moving through to the Coral Sea as a very weak tropical low before it starts to intensify, and that's when we start to get a more uncertain picture regarding its forward motion and also its intensity. The Eastern Relief was expecting a strong cyclone, but the GFS is expecting this to really elongate and extend the low pressure system and really stretch itself out, so it's likely not going to be that strong, and that's because of tropical cyclone activity across Fiji and so forth, really pulling out all of the moisture and energy from the Coral Sea into themselves, because they'll be stronger tropical lows, which I mean is a very good chance of happening, and it's probably the best case scenario for Australia for that to happen. And then, yeah, we really don't see anything out of this apart from, again, a weak tropical low sitting offshore from the Australian coastline. It's very close to Australia, mind you, and it might intensify by the end of next week. But this forecast from the GFS screams uncertainty, and it screams that the GFS doesn't really know what it's forecasting or what it's looking at. It's kind of just throwing out a system for the sake of throwing out a system, so I wouldn't be putting my money behind this at this time. It's very hard to make a forecast on this tropical low, which, by the way, is tagged 06U past about Wednesday. Wednesday is kind of the cutoff for the good forecast. And if we're talking about good forecasts, we probably shouldn't be looking at the Access G3 model, but we will just for fun's sake. Well, that was a big spoiler alert. You can see a very powerful cyclone down here. But by next Tuesday, again, keeping it in check, centre of the Coral Sea, a strong tropical low starting to develop. It's pretty congruent with all the major forecast models. And then it goes boom. It starts to rapidly intensify by next Wednesday and into Thursday, moving towards the Australian coastline. And then by, I'll pan it up here, by around Thursday and Friday, it then starts its more southerly track shift. It's quite close to Australia at this point, actually, and you can see as I continue to play this through, it only puts on more knots, and it gets about as strong as probably Cyclone Jasper at peak intensity, with maximum wind gusts of 130, minimum pressure rather of 935 millibars, and maximum wind gusts probably approaching 230 kilometers an hour. This would be a Category 4 strength severe tropical cyclone here, moving down towards New Caledonia and so forth. It's a very strong system that we're seeing here from the Access G3 forecast model. It's plausible, the conditions are there for a system of this magnitude in the Coral Sea, but I just don't foresee it happening because there's no other forecast models that have really called for this so far, and it's a very, very big shift. And we've also seen the Access G3 completely mess up on storms such as Kirrily. I mean, the Access expected a very powerful tropical cyclone basically right up towards landfall, and I guess Kirrily was powerful, but it really did miss the population centres. But yeah, quite a strong system expected from the Access G3 forecast model, almost thumbnail material this forecast model run. But yeah, very significant system of a very high magnitude. We're no longer looking at a storm threat for Vanuatu and New Caledonia by the looks of things. That's something that I've just noticed. All major models yesterday were calling for this system to move towards Vanuatu and New Caledonia and basically stall over Vanuatu and New Caledonia, but it looks like the low pressure areas have moved further towards the Queensland coastline, and therefore the steering currents are not going to be as strong in pulling it towards Vanuatu and New Caledonia, and it's just going to hover in the Coral Sea for the next 10 days, where it will have ample fuel to become quite strong, but it isn't very likely to become that said strong system just because of wind shear at this time. It's looking quite high for the system, and it's also just a tropical low at this point, so it's very hard to make a good long-term forecast on a tropical low, especially when the forecast models don't exactly know what they want from the system either. So once again, a difficult forecast to make. But yeah, a lot of rainfall expected from this system as well, even on New Caledonia. The leeward side, the eastern side of New Caledonia, could be receiving quite a gnarly amount of rainfall over the next 10 days, up to 600 millimeters for some locations. So if you're living on New Caledonia, make sure you're watching out for potential flash flooding from all of this tropical moisture that's moving through. But anyway, a rather quick update for today. I do hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, then please do leave a like and subscribe as well. Thank you so much for 10,000 subscribers again. It's been a pleasure presenting the weather to everyone. If you've got any feedback, then please do leave it in the comment section down below, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.